Hello, how you doing? I want to talk about this in defense of Kenneth Copeland. Now, there are a lot of videos out there by different different types of people, and they seem to be very annoyed at Kenneth Copeland's wealth. That he has a fortune between 700 million and $2 billion. And the inference is that he got it from hustling poor people, exploiting poor people who's given to the ministry. That's the inference. But in defense of him, I used to be a partner with Kenneth Copeland Ministries. And when you're a partner with these ministries, you learn a lot about the head of the ministries. And this is what he said, when him and Gloria first got married, they made a vow to not get in any debt for any reason, whether it's a car, house, or ministry. Now, some people do borrow on behalf of the ministry. They will borrow like so-and-so $1 million, maybe for airtime or something. I don't know. But him and Gloria made this vow to each other. They would not get into debt for any reason. And of course, he came into the marriage with debt, and I don't know. I know he came into the marriage with debt. I'm not sure if she did or not. But anyway, from then on, he said they made a vow not to get into debt for any reason. So they just never got into debt throughout their marriage. Now, if I had never gotten into debt to buy a car, house, credit card debt, or a card to buy clothes, you can back in the day, you could get a credit card from a particular store, like ABC clothing store. You get their particular credit card. If I had never gotten any of those credit cards, credit cards for clothing, credit cards for a car, debt to buy a house, you know what? I would have so much more money in the bank too. Because if you really think about the interest at that time was, whopping 25%. So I would, and not to mention furniture, when we first got married, what did we do? We got furniture on credit, which we shouldn't have. We should have just gone to the thrift shop and buy some cheap furniture. That's what we should have done. But, we paid off the debt. We were good stewards of the money. We paid off all the debt. But if we had never incurred those debts, I know I personally would have some decent money in the bank. So why are you faulting him for having the wisdom not to get into any debt for any reason? I've heard that story from Christians before. They got into debt when they were young. They couldn't pay the bill. They came in, repossessed the TV, repossessed the car, or whatever, because, for some reason, Christians overextend themselves. They buy cars they can't afford, etc., etc. So you can't really fault him for deciding not to get into debt for any reason. And they had this program called the 10 Days of Prosperity. One was Miss Gloria and her son-in-law, George, 10 Days of Prosperity. And then I think there was one video where she did it with her husband, Kenneth Copeland. And they talked about how they just didn't get into debt for any reason. And I think they have taught their children that too. But like I said, there are a lot of ministries that do deal in debt, and they end up broke, or they put pressure on the poor, hapless congregation and their ministry partners to pay off the debt. They put enormous pressure. I've seen it. I've seen it even where I live. Ministries, they get into debt, and then they put pressure on the congregation to pay off the bill, because they know the congregation is stupid enough to do it. Okay. But like I said, they made a vow very early in their marriage not to get into debt for any reason. And if I had done that in my early 20s, made a vow to myself, because look, sometimes you can't work with your husband. If you have a boyfriend, you really can't work with him at all. But look, sometimes you can't work with your husband because he's not on the same plane that you're in. So you have to make a vow to yourself that you will not get into. If I had just made a vow to myself, I will not ever get into debt for any reason whatsoever. I'd have some decent money in the bank. I would have some money in the bank right now If I had gotten myself on a savings plan, $20 a month, $25 a month, I'd have some money in the bank right now. I would. Some decent money. I'd have some money in the bank right now. If I had never gotten into debt, if I had just saved $25 a month, I'd have some decent money right now. So you really can't fault him for deciding not to get into debt for any reason. You just can't. You can't. I mean, a lot of you should do the same. Just don't get into debt for any reason. Bye.